All right. Good day, everybody. We are back, and this is the 411 Wrestling Interviews podcast. I'm Jeffrey Harris. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, thank you for finding the show. Thank you for listening to the show. If you're listening to it on one of our many platforms, if you're listening to us on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, thank you for discovering the show, and thank you for listening along. So for today's interview, we are interviewing another talent, another wrestler from the MLW roster. This is Dominic Garrini. Dominic is a world-renowned grappler and BJJ practitioner from Canton, Ohio. About a couple years ago, he started making the transition into pro wrestling. And last year, he signed with Major League Wrestling, and now he's part of the Major League Wrestling roster. Now, of course, MLW is currently on hold with most of its shows, but interestingly enough, Dominic got to wrestle on one of the last live wrestling events in front of a live crowd with the AAA versus MLW Super Series. I think it was in Tijuana in March. So right before everything was shut down due to this pandemic, he was teaming with Tom Lawler on that show. So I think that'll be a very interesting conversation. So without further ado, here is our exclusive interview with Dominic Garrini here on the 411 Wrestling Interviews podcast. All right, good day, everybody. Welcome back to the 411 Wrestling Interviews podcast. For today's guest, he is the Canton Crippler. He is a Brazilian jiu-jitsu practitioner, a BJJ master, and he is a member of the MLW roster. He is Dominic Garrini. Did I say that right, Dominic?
Sure did.
All right.
A plus there, A plus.
Thank you, man. So, how are you doing today, Dominic? And thanks for joining us.
No problem. I'm just, I'm living life out here, trying to keep myself entertained and just keep myself busy.
All right. So, you recently joined the MLW roster last year. So what made you want to take, coming from a traditional grappling, Brazilian jiu-jitsu background, what made you want to make the transition into pro wrestling?
For me, I've always been a pro wrestling fan. I was a pro wrestling fan back when I was younger. And when I was 15, 16, I found the independent wrestling scene and kind of how to break into wrestling. So I decided that when I was 16, I was I'm going to be a pro wrestler. Well, high school happened. Wrestling got a little less cool in my mind. I started amateur wrestling, playing high school football. And then from there, I fell out of love with pro wrestling and more in love with MMA. So then I ended up starting to train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu with the goal in mind of saying, hey, I'm going to be an MMA guy. Well, I got about a year into my training in Jiu-Jitsu while I was still, cross-training other, martial arts. And I really started to fall in love with the sport Jiu-Jitsu. So when I fell in love with sport Jiu-Jitsu, it kind of consumed me into, I don't want to be an MMA fighter now. I want to be a Jiu-Jitsu world champion or win the Pan Ams for Jiu-Jitsu. So from the years 2010 through about 2015, those 5 years were just spent doing a lot of amateur or a lot of, jiu-jitsu tournaments every weekend, going out on the road, competing and getting that experience. I did 3 Pan Ams. I did 2 world championships. I did no D Pans. So I did a little bit of everything. And then in about 2015, I competed at the world championships. And I think I was just getting burned out at the time. So I was doing training camps in Chicago at the time, outside of, the Cleveland, Canton area where I live. And during that time of those training camps, we was doing 2 practices a day and there'd be a lot of downtime in between. So I got really back into pro wrestling at that point. One of the things that got me really back into it was that, Kevin Steen was, making his main roster debut, and he was always a guy that I really gravitated towards when he was, first coming around the Indies in 05 and 06. So for me to see, one of my favorites get from, the Indies all the way to the main roster, and at that time feuding with John Cena, it was the big deal to me. So I kind of fell back in love with it. And after the Worlds, when I did not win, I was, kind of burned out. I attended a Raw in Cleveland when I returned from my training camp. And that night, I was just like, you know what? I think I want to try something different. And I, Googled training schools in Canton, and the closest results were a couple, one of which was the AIW Training Center in Cleveland under Johnny Gargano and Candice LeRae. And I made the decision to start training pro wrestling in late July, early August of 2015.
Oh, so did you train with Gargano and LeRae?
Yes, they were. Johnny and Candice were my trainers.
Oh man, that's well. That sounds like some excellent training to kind of like get your feet wet and learn the business, learn the ropes from.
Absolutely. For me, it was really cool, too, for Johnny, because Johnny had spent so much time in Evolve and with guys like Drew Gulak, Biff Busick, and, Timothy Thatcher over there, that he kind of was able to peg down my grappling style and tailor me to the kind of pro wrestler that he thought that I'd need to be successful in pro wrestling. So, it was definitely an ace in the hole there.
Now, some months back, MLW announced your signing and you made your MLW debut. Why did you gravitate toward MLW, and why did you think this was the best fit for you to sign a contract?
Well, that was, let's say, I signed in August of 2019. So in August 2018, I just finished September of 2018, I just finished a 1-year run with Evolve. And I got a chance to work with some really great people involved: Walter, Tim Thatcher, guys like that, Chris Dickinson, Hot Sauce Tracy Williams, J.D. Drake, Anthony Henry. I got a chance to work with so many great people there, and preferably Malcolm Bivens, Stokely Hathaway. And when Evolve decided to kind of let Stokely go his own way and do his own thing, I was so attached to him as his bodyguard that, it was kind of a period of like refining myself. So that was in September, I would say, of 2019 or 2018. So I kind of made it my goal between 2018 and, from where I got signed in August, to kind of reinvent myself and to just change who I was. I was this brooding MMA style guy for Evolve, and I wanted to be a little bit more than that. I wanted to show the matches that I could have, because I knew that if I kind of had chains off, that I could be so much more. So I spent really a lot of pretty much the rest of 2018 and the first half of 2019 really just doing a lot of stuff. One of the things that I really got involved in was becoming a tag team with Kevin Koo, Violence is Forever, and we did a lot of tagging and stuff. And just one night I reached out to MLW, because I was looking at, the options that were out there. I talked to MSL, one of their talent relations guys. He had actually known me from my Evolve run. He had seen me wrestle in Florida a couple of times and was, really interested in my style. As well, one of the things that gravitated me towards MLW was the kind of renewed focus on shooters there. You have guys like, at the time, they had Tim Thatcher before he was signed to the WWE. They have Davey Boy Smith. They have, Tom. They have and like Loki, they have so many guys that, have shoot-style backgrounds that I really thought that it'd be a great place for me to kind of work with those guys, hone my craft, as well as then getting, the very valuable TV experience that, as much as we want to think that the indies are TV is written so much differently and produced so much differently than most wrestling that's out there. So that was one of the things that really, made me gravitate towards MLW.
So you kind of already answered what was going to be one of my next questions. So you were really encouraged by that. MLW's, they have a very unique, eclectic roster where they're kind of going after these guys with combat sports and kind of shooter backgrounds, and not just, sort of traditional career pro wrestlers. Because, you got, a guy like Tom Lawler. You have, a guy like Muhammad Lawal King Mo, who's he's a former MMA fighter, former Strikeforce champion, top-level collegiate wrestler, and now, a guy like you. So does that encourage you that MLW is taking those steps and, and because I think it brings a very unique style to their product?
Yeah, absolutely. I really like what MLW's done and the kind of talent development that they've had, getting guys like Tom, getting guys like King Mo, guys like myself, that's something that Court really looks out for. Court really loves the idea behind the shoot style aspect of pro wrestling, and also the real tough guys in his mind of pro wrestling. and I think he's really put together such a blend there. And I think that's something that, like, I've talked with Low-Key about a bunch, too, is that Low-Key really, Low-Key and Court really love the idea that there's just so many different, variations of killers within the MLW roster. Like, Tom's an all-around killer. He can kill you from top to bottom, with his MMA background. King Mo is such an amazing wrestler that's his killer trait. I have such great Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, that's my killer trait. Like, everybody's got their own killer trait to them that, makes each and every match that we can put on between each other so intriguing.
Now, your MLW debut against Ariel Dominguez was, was eye-opening. You came in with your gi, no boots or footwear. Did you feel like you needed to make a statement with the way you represented yourself and your brand when you stepped into the ring in MLW?
Yeah, always. For me, I'm out. My bigger goal, besides loving pro wrestling, is to show the world Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, show the functionality of it off, and to show, what it can really do in a fight. Like, there's a great Joe Rogan clip where someone's on Joe's podcast. He goes, "What's the functional use of Jiu-Jitsu?" And Joe goes, "Well, if we got to fight, I'd kill you." And, like, to me, that's my thought process. Ariel is an amazing amateur wrestler, whether people know it or not. And the idea was, like, he took me down, but the moment he took me down, that goes, you're going right into my, you're going right into my landscape. It's like jumping in the ocean with the shark. You think that you've got all the, you got all the answers, but I'm going to switch the questions if you take me out of the ground.
I think sometimes fans can be used to a very overly homogenized style when it comes to pro wrestling. And watching your match with Dominguez, it was just so interesting because it was a unique style that I'm not really used to seeing inside pro wrestling, but I thought it was very effective because it looked so genuine and it looked legit. It looked like all you wanted to do was to get a hold of a limb and put on a submission hold. And was that something you wanted to set out to do, with your pro wrestling career, to present something that looks and feels different when you get into the ring?
Yeah, for sure. Like, that's something I've always kind of been really ingrained from the beginning. Candice and Johnny put it in me, and Hot Sauce Tracy Williams always put it in me. I might not be able to do all the flips and all the athletic fun stuff that, like, a Ricochet or like a Will Ospreay does, but if they go do that a match before me, I'm going to give them something to the match right after, this authentic, this real feel of the moment that I lock up with you. The match could end at any time because of my submissions, because of my skill.
So, I mean, how is it, developing kind of that style, this sort of like a shoot style of grappling into wrestling and making that sort of, making that the Dominic Garrini style?
It's interesting because it takes so many different things. You take all my jiu-jitsu backgrounds, and then I look back into like shoot style wrestling from Japan from the late 80s and early to mid 90s, UWF, UWFI, things like that, to kind of see what they were doing, what was working for them, mixing stuff in then with some early 2000s to mid 2000s MMA, and just kind of coming up with a hodgepodge of, well, how do we make this entertaining? How do we make this exciting? But how do we also make it intriguing and to fit within, what we're looking to do? And I really think that, every match out's, coming better and getting better. And you look at, like, Tom and I, we always have talks, and, Erichs Stevens involved, all three of us, we talk all the time about how to make, this shoot style something that's more exciting and that people are enjoying more. And you look at, success on the independent level, like Josh Barnett, doing Bloodsport multiple times a year now. And I just did an entire, indie show that was based around the UWFI rules at a tournament. It was the best show that company's ever had, that had more buzz for that company than anything else. So I really think that, all the work that guys like myself and Tom have been putting in, it really kind of helped lead to a style revival here in the United States.
I mean, do you think that's ironic at all? Because, when you look at the history of pro wrestling, it's sort of rooted in that kind of more shooter-oriented style of grappling and grappling contests.
Yeah, it is ironic that, the idea behind pro wrestling when it started in the carnivals in the early 20s was that it was a shoot, or it was, a work shoot where, guys were challenging people from the crowd to come in and they'd have the plant in the crowd. So I think it's almost a full circle thing that, we're coming back now and, 2020 almost 100 years later, and the shoot style is coming back and makes such a resurgence.
Okay, so last March, you got to team up with Filthy Tom Lawler at the AAA versus MLW Super Series. Representing MLW, you guys defeated Puma King and Extreme Tiger. This was one of the last events, the last pro wrestling events to be in front of a live crowd, in front of thousands of fans before this whole coronavirus pandemic shutdown. So I guess what was it like for you just a few months into your MLW run to be teaming with Tom Lawler at a big event like this, and then right before, like, the whole world shuts down right after that?
Yeah, I remember they brought us out a day early for everything, so I literally landed in San Diego on Thursday, and I had a text from Court, and it was like, hey, if you're not comfortable wrestling this weekend, there's no problem with that. He goes, no worries. He goes, we'll just get promos, and we'll go from there. At that point, I was already in San Diego from Cleveland, so I was like, let's go. I said, I'm good. And I also kind of had it in the back of my head, like, man, this will be the last match I have for a little while. So to me, there was no better place to have one of my last matches for, the foreseeable future than in front of thousands of people. I'd never wrestled in Mexico to that point, so I was really excited for that. The opportunity to work for AAA as well was just unparalleled. So it was all those things together. Getting the team with Tom's one of the biggest things, because from the day Tom started in MLW, Tom always beat the drum to bring me into MLW. Tom and I have been friends, for a couple years now, and he's really been a guy that's always pushed for me in MLW. And when I told him that I was going to sign, he was beyond, he was over the moon excited for it. So to be able to share, that Mexico debut with Tom, and then to be as hated as we were there, because I don't know how it came off on the video, but man, they hated Tom and I that night, and it was almost like a perfect storm. And if I was gonna, like I said, if I was gonna have one match, to last me for about 6 months, that was probably one of the better ones that I could have had.
Now, but I mean, what's it like to go from that to go where we've been for almost the last couple months? We're in quarantine, everything shut down. I mean, we have WWE and AEW on TV, but they're empty shows. And
Yeah.
We're waiting for MLW to come back. What is this like for you? We're kind of in this sort of indefinite holding pattern.
It's one of those things that, for me, the most important thing is the health of not only myself, but also, my friends and the other individuals that I work with. I don't think, and I know Court's got, more than enough stuff on tap that he doesn't, and I've talked with Court, multiple times over quarantine. Court wants to ensure that everything's safe. He doesn't want to, force us back out in front of crowds, until he knows that everything is fine. It does suck, because obviously before this, MLW was really coming up with a strong amount of momentum. You look at it, we had a sellout at the ECW Arena at the start of the year, along with the sellout in Dallas. So you had those two sellouts. We just had, 5,000 people in Mexico. So there was so much good momentum going. So it kind of sucks for all that to be called. Obviously, one of the big things that's been, the hot stove around the wrestling world has been a possible new TV deal for MLW. And, who knows what the future holds with that. But, like I said, the biggest thing is just the health of all of us as workers, on top of, the health of, our friends and our families. You look at a guy like Tom Lawler, he's got, children. Erichs has children. So, a lot of the MLW roster, it's not just them living in an apartment by themselves. They have families to worry about. So that's the most important thing. And obviously, like I said, it sucks that everything hit a standstill. It was obviously right before this all happened. Probably my best friend in the world, Kevin Koo, just got signed, and he was supposed to make his debut in Chicago. But of course, with nothing on the foreseeable future until things change, his debut got held back, and I know he's been disappointed by that, but, he understands as well. So it's just a waiting game, and I trust that, Court and the rest of the MLW team, is going to wait until they know that it's safe for the entire roster and the staff, to come back and to tape and whatnot. They've digitized the 2002 through 2004 library of Underground TV, which I'm really excited, for that to debut, because it's got so much cool stuff on it. So.
Now, do you think on any level, like, for guys like you, is this sort of waiting period, is it lighting a fire at all, or do you think it will light a fire, once you guys can get back to work and get back to business, and you'll be coming out raring to go?
So I've come to the conclusion it's gonna lead to one of two things. Either it's gonna lead to people being real fired up, wrestler-wise, like myself. I've been watching multiple hours of wrestling every day. I've been thinking of, things to add to my arsenal, ways that I can do things different, storyline ideas that I can pitch, all of that good stuff. Like, to me, like, really, like, this time off, from not only this, but also my normal everyday job, this is really giving me time to focus so much on wrestling and so much on the things that I want to get done. And, once we're allowed to go back to it. So it's really lit a fire under my butt. But I can also see guys that, this happens and they blame the world for everything that's happened to them. And, they don't know how to come back from this. They might have had no momentum and they don't know how to recapture that play. And they're going to, spiral out of control from it. But, I'm hoping that we'll have an entire roster full of guys that are really fired up, ready to go. Obviously, the mass WWE releases should fire everybody, not only in MLW up, but in the independent wrestling scene up, to step their game up, because you have about 20 guys and girls that just got cut from contracts that are coming for the spots, that we're all trying to inhibit. So it's going to be a really interesting time, once everything gets back to, whatever kind of new normal we can have.
Now, I guess how important we've heard a lot of discussions lately in recent weeks about, the crowd aspects and, performing in front of maybe, without a live crowd or not. But I mean, how important is the crowd aspect for you when you're performing and you're competing? Is it, and do you anticipate, when you are back in the ring, maybe MLW might have to have empty shows or no live crowds for a while at least, but I have no idea.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously, when I was learning how to wrestle at the IW school, Johnny and Candice would always have us do practice matches in front of either no one or, the 6 or 7 guys and gals that were at school that day. So it was one of those things that they always made sure to drill it into us to react and to sell to even if the crowd's not there. You act, even though there's 7 people there, they say, imagine how easy it'll be if 700 people are there. So it's something that I've always, kind of akin to and thought about. And you look at it, I will say one thing, without the crowd to feed off of, without all that noise, without all that energy, the bumps hurt a little bit more, the chops hurt a little more, everything hurts a little bit more because you don't have that energy to feed off from the crowd. But it's one of those things that if, we can run shows again, or if and when we can run shows again, if there's no crowd, it's something that we have to adjust to. But I think it hurts more from the viewer at home perspective. If you're watching something and there's no crowd, that background noise is rough when there's no background noise and things like that. That's why, I really think what AEW's done by putting at least some of the wrestlers around the ring to get that crowd noise, to get that feedback, it toughed out a little bit more than those empty arena WWE Performance Center shows where everything's so, visible, or is so, audio visually, there for the fans to hear.
That being said, there was some, it just seems every other day we hear some interesting news about, Court Bauer and MLW making sort of a new deal or some sort of new expansion for MLW. Like just a couple days ago, we heard about the in-demand pay-per-view deal. So it definitely sounds like, MLW's still making moves and it could, once we do recover from this, it could be more exciting than ever for you in MLW. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, Court is making moves every single day. I mean, I think this week alone you had the in-demand deal, as well as, talking about the second TV series that they're going to be, putting out later this year. So Court's one of the business men in professional wrestling. He's always working. He's always trying to, increase everything for us. And he's also the guy that I would assume has probably been working the phones to see what kind of deals he can make this whole time. Because, when it comes back, he wants everything to be at a higher level and to even higher, even better than it was before. Like I said, we had so much momentum rolling before, I think that the stuff that the Fusion episodes they've aired on BN have been some of the top 5 episodes in terms of ratings altogether. So it's been nothing but a really positive year ratings-wise and business-wise for MLW. And even with, everything that's going on right now, Court's, working the lines along with the rest of the staff to just keep everything rolling and keep everything getting better for us.
Now, due to your relationship and chemistry with Tom Lawler, would you like to continue teaming with him? And do you guys maybe want to target Ross and Marshall Von Erichs? Is is it time for you to get some gold in MLW when the time comes and you guys will go after Von Erichs and take their belts?
Yeah, with, before the quarantine, it was going to be maybe a little different because, Tom was going to have to try to split time between the Pro Fight League contract that he just signed in MLW, but with Pro Fight League canceling their upcoming season, if we can get back, by the end of the year, Tom and I are definitely, targeting them Von Erich boys. We just think they've been given almost everything in MLW. Everything's been a silver platter to them, whereas guys like myself and Tom have had to work harder than those guys have because our last name isn't Von Erich and we're not, dynasty wrestlers like they are. So they're definitely in our crosshairs. What we did in Dallas was just the start of everything with them. And, our game plan is to continue to terrorize them until they give us what we want, which is those tag team titles.
And earlier this year, what was it like for you to get to step into the 2300 arena, formerly the ECW arena, part of Team Filthy against the Von Erichs team, to be in an iconic venue like that, as a longtime fan, and to be able to work in the ring in that place, what was that like for you?
Man, to main event, 2300 arena, formerly known as the ECW arena. Unreal. So many of my memories from, growing up, watching ECW on Sun Sports when I was living in Florida as a young man, into watching the older indie shows it was New Alhambra Hall when I was watching indie shows there on VHS and DVD. So to get a chance to go in there, main event, and then not only main event, but main event against guys like the Von Erichs and Davey Smith Jr., it's just like, it's a wild thing, and it's one of those things that MLW has afforded me the chance to do. And to get to do it with two of my better friends, Tom Lawler and Eric Stevens, can't beat it. Can't forget our always trusty fourth kid Osborne, who's been an amazingly awesome addition when we've had him around to help out Team Filthy.
All right. Dominic, this has been great. Just last thing, I want you to, if you want to take the time, if you have any social plugs, any media plugs or anything else you have going on that you'd like to share with us or the listeners, I wanted to just give you that time to do that. So please go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. You can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at dgarrini, DGARRINIBC. And then also I have a Pro Wrestling Tees store that is prowrestlingtees.com/dgarrini. That's got all of my, almost all of my designs I have for Pro Wrestling Tees. And then also you can check out my first T-shirt available on the MLW store. So if you go to the MLW store and you search my name, it'll be there. So hopefully, we'll be back to at least a little bit of wrestling soon. But if not, everybody out there, stay safe and stay healthy.
Thank you, Dominic. Thanks for your time. Likewise to you as well, staying safe and just getting out of this sort of shutdown, okay? And looking forward to seeing you back on TV, back in the ring, and going after the Von Erichs boys and getting some belts for you, for your wrestling career. So appreciate it, and thanks for all this time.
Thank you. No problem. Thanks for taking the time to interview me today.
All right. You've been listening to Dominic Garrini, the Canton Crippler, the MLW wrestler, the BJJ champion, and this is the 411 Wrestling Interviews podcast. Thank you, everybody. All right. And that was our interview with Dominic Garrini. If you're listening to our show, if you're listening to us on YouTube, would very much appreciate if you could leave us a comment, if you could give us a like or thumbs up, or if you could just subscribe to our channel, we would very much appreciate it. Also, if you are listening to us on Apple Podcasts, if you wouldn't mind leaving us a 5-star comment, review, what have you, we would very much appreciate it. You can find us at the 411 Mania YouTube channel, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify. But more than anything, thanks for listening. This is a crazy time right now, so I hope everyone's safe and, you're getting through this okay. But thank you for the time. We really appreciate you listening to this program, and stay tuned for more. This is Jeffrey Harris, but you can call me the J to the E to the double F-ree here on the 411 Wrestling Interviews podcast. Thank you, everybody.